Hello all, welcome to Global Online University. I hope you guys are doing well. This is a very important and very exciting news for you. I have made a dedicated video where you are going to get all information about communication unit. This is the fourth unit of your paper 1 syllabus, and for May 2021 this video is going to help you a lot because here I have discussed each and every unit, each and every topic in detail, which is going to help you. I am sure after watching this video completely, you will be able to solve all questions of paper 1 communication part in the examination. So before going to the theory, for your UGC NET May paper 1 2021, we have brought for you batch 2 on our WhatsApp group, which will be starting from 2nd March. The speciality of this is that we have designed this batch 2 in a way where you will be getting 60 mock tests daily before your exam. This will end on 31st April, since your exam is starting from May 2nd May. So everything will be done, everything will be provided to you before 31st of April. These tests will include full syllabus test and unit specific test along with previous year's papers. Also, we will be giving you PDFs at 7 p.m. sharp, so you can get your errors at that particular moment and you can rectify it. You will also be getting ebook with well-researched notes along with video course through theory and MCQs with 1000 extra booster MCQs. So if you are interested in joining, you can contact this WhatsApp number. The fees for joining is only 999. Alternatively, you can download Global Online University app if you want to get all the benefits. The fees for 3 months is 999 for people who are targeting May examination, and for people who are targeting May as well as the next examination, for them the fees is 1499. So I think this is the best offer for the upcoming examination. So let's move on to the theory for communication unit. Types and characteristics. Then you have effective communication, verbal, non-verbal communication, interculture and group communication, classroom communication, barriers to effective communication, and mass media and society. First, let's talk about what communication is. See, when a baby is born into this world, at that particular moment, it naturally knows how to communicate to the world. Since the baby does not know how to speak, it cries and tells the mother, all the people around them, what he or she wants. So from the time we are born, communication process begins. Communication is the transfer of messages between two people. For instance, I want to tell something, we can use our words. There are different ways through which I can communicate from my body language, from my words, through written means. All these are different types of communication. Let's talk about the definition of communication. Communication is the process of sending and receiving messages through verbal, it could be verbal or it could be non-verbal. So verbal includes speech, oral communication, writing and graphical representation, infographics, maps, and charts. So, wherever words are being used, it is verbal. Non verbal is like signs, signals, behavior, gestures, postures. More simply, communication is said to be the creation and exchange of meaning. What you want to do is exchange meaning or understanding. So, some scholars have said communication is so simple and difficult that we never put it in simple words. This was said by T.S. Matthew. Communication is the process by which information is transmitted between individuals and or organizations so that understanding response response results. What they want to do is they want to build understanding, that is communication. One more definition is communication is an exchange of facts, ideas, opinions, and emotions by two or more persons. So, very simple. When you want to say something, you want to uh, transfer your ideas or thoughts, you can use different ways to give your message to the other person. So, let's talk about what are the objectives of communication. Objective, the meaning of objective also means aim. What is the aim? What is the purpose of communication? It is the first is transfer ideas, meaning, and concepts from sender to the receiver. Sender is the person who is sending the message, and receiver is taking the information from the sender. Development of interpersonal skills. When two people speak to each other, what happens? There is a bond between them. The bond need not always be very informal like you have with your family or with your friend. Bond is something, there should be a rapport. You can also have a, a relationship with your neighbor. It could be a friendly relationship. So when you communicate, when you talk to the other person, interpersonal skills develop. What is interpersonal skills? How you communicate in a particular situation. See, whether it is sharing good news like a job or promotion, or bad news like death of a family member, you should know how to handle different situations. Third is raising motivation and morale. This is very important. If you're working in an organization, you are the head of a team. You want to encourage your employees. You want them to work hard. For instance, your junior is there, you are the head, and he is not, maybe he has some problems, or he might not be very motivated. So what do you tell your junior? You tell them that okay, if you work hard this time, if you achieve this particular target, we will get you promoted. Okay. So, how do you get this? Through communication. So, through communication, we can motivate people, we can increase their morale. So, communication is helpful, is a kind of encouraging factor when you are working in an organization. Next is education. When a child goes to the age of 2 years, 3 years, from that education process starts. Because the child, when he or she comes in this world, they don't know how to speak, how to eat, how to walk. So through communication, through talking to the child, we inculcate knowledge in them. So through communication, it is one of the most important means of transferring education or knowledge into a child, or even into adults. So if you want to teach an adult, then also communication is going to come into role. Fifth is organizations. So if you're working in an organization, you want to talk about what are the different policies, how the work is going to be done. Like there is a company who is selling a product, so how to advertise, all these things are to be told through communication. Last and final is establish social contact and linkage. This is very, very important. For instance, you have a friend. So you, if for instance, your school friend, you just stop speaking to that friend for 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, then the friendship literally it declines. Okay, your bond or the friendship, it decreases. Why? Because communication fills that gap between two people is filled by communication. Only when two people talk, the bond between them increases. For instance, your relative, if you don't meet them, you will not understand what is a cousin or your aunt. When you spend time, you communicate, so it builds a very healthy relationship between two people. Uh, there is also a case when two people communicate, it could also turn into a fight, but still there will be a bond, maybe of rivalry or a friendship, but communication helps to build social contact and linkage. There are some people, for instance, those who are businessmen, especially businessmen, they need to have a lot of contacts with different people. For instance, I am having I am a doctor. A doctor also, through communication, it it can heal some amount of pain of a patient. How? Because you might have also felt this when we are sick, we go to see the doctor. When we meet them, we definitely feel a little better. When the doctor says, no, don't worry, you are going to be fine. Through communication, the doctor can make us feel better because it gives us motivation. So communication helps to establish social contact and linkage. Let's talk about the various elements of communication. What does communication comprise of? The first and foremost, the most important here is the sender. The sender is the person from where the communication begins. The sender may be a writer, a speaker, or the one who is simply giving a gesture. His presence is must for communication. If there is not a sender in a communication, the communication process will not get initiated. For instance, there is a class, you are waiting for a lecture. The students are sitting, there are hundreds of students sitting for some lecture. Hundreds of students are sitting in a very big auditorium, but the speaker or the teacher did not come, the communication process will not start. So sender is very important in the communication process. Next is encoding. This is also a very important element of communication process. So what is encoding? It is nothing, just the conversion of ideas into message through the use of language. So the language could be, you could even use words, you could even use your gestures. So just converting your ideas into language is encoding. And remember, encoding is always done at the sender side. Okay. However, if you read this, non-verbal means such as gestures, wink means when you blink only your one eye, that means wink. Smile, grunt, frown. Frown means when you're sad. Wave of hand. These provide another form through which messages are or thoughts are transmitted. So transferring of ideas or the thoughts of the sender into suitable languages encoding. So message is actually what the sender is trying to send. The encoded message required to be transmitted appropriately in written or verbal form. So for instance, I want to teach the students how to add two numbers. These are just first class students. So for them, I will tell them, I will stand in front of the class and explain them that 2 plus 2 is equals to 4. So when I say these words, I am using verbal codes to teach the students. The fourth part of communication is the channel or the media, or you can also call it as medium. So the which medium is used in sending. For instance, if you are sending the letter, this is a verbal communication, but the medium here is letter. If you're talking to a person over the phone, it is going to be telephone. The medium is telephone. Normally, when you are talking to your friends or family members or your teacher in the classroom, it is a face to face conversation. On electronic gadgets, these days you can talk over the phone, or you can Skype on the laptop or computers. So, through electronic gadgets, these are different types of channel you can call on media. The fifth is decoding. Decoding happens always at the receiver end. So decoding is the process through which receiver interprets or takes out meaning from what the sender is saying. Successful communication occurs when the receiver decodes the messages and attaches meaning to it. See, if the teacher is trying to teach you something and you are not able to understand, then there the communication fails. The communication is only successful when decoding is properly happening at the receiver end. Whatever the message is, the receiver is getting it in an appropriate manner or in a manner that what the sender is saying, then the communication will be successful. The sixth element of a communication process is the receiver. Receiver is the person to whom the sender wants to send the message. For instance, you are calling your friend, so your friend is the receiver. Or if a politician is saying something to the audience, the people who are sitting in front of him or the people who are standing in front of him, they are the receivers. There is one more important element which is called feedback. So feedback is an important component. It helps the sender. What is important? For whom feedback is important? It is very important for sender to help them know what they are saying or what they are trying to convey. Has the receiver got it or not? For instance, a teacher is teaching the students and asks, the teacher asks, did you understand the topic or the concept? If the students say yes, the teacher can continue to another topic, and if the students say no, the teacher will explain the same topic again, because the students have given their feedback. Feedback helps the sender to make necessary changes in the communication. Okay, so even they are saying any response, even no response is feedback. So if you are arguing with your friend and at one point time the other person is so angry that this just stop speaking, so they have stopped giving response, even that is also a feedback that they don't want to speak anymore. So you see, no speaking also gives us information. Now let's talk about the various types of communication. So this is also a very important part of this unit, where the communication are of different types. The classification is based on the basis of relationship element, on the basis of communication channel, basis of formality, and the basis of direction. So first let's talk about classification on the basis of relationship element. The first is intrapersonal communication. Intrapersonal, students, intra means within. In school you might have had inter-house competition, you remember? We had different houses, like the school in which I studied, there were red house, blue house, green house, yellow house. So when there was competition between different houses, it was called inter-house competition. And when there is a competition within the people of same house, it was called intra. So intra means within and inter means among. So intrapersonal communication is communication when you are talking to yourself or oneself. Sometimes what happens is we are driving the car and someone is driving very rashly. So what happens? We get very irritated, right? We started murmuring. Even if we are driving alone, we say, oh, he doesn't know how to drive only. So all that, there is no one in the communication process, but you are speaking to yourself. Even sometimes when you sit idly, nothing is happening around you, you're in a quiet room, still there are so many thoughts that are going inside your brain, in your subconscious mind. That is also intrapersonal communication. So it is very important, as they play a vital role in determining our self-esteem, self-perception, what we think about ourselves, how we apply ourselves in the community, in the society. There are various benefits of intrapersonal communication, first is self awareness. It allows the person to be aware of their personality. Okay, so when we talk about ourselves, when we sit alone, so what we think, okay, I am good at this, I think if I improve in this area, you have an exam, so you are sitting idly and you think, okay, last time I did good in maths, but I was weak in science, so what I'll do is, if I work 1 hour extra on science, I can get more marks. So what is this? This is just an example of intrapersonal communication. It brings self confidence. What happens when you speak to yourself? For instance, you have a speech, you have to give a speech in the school. So you stand in front of the mirror and you practice. So you are talking to yourself. That is intrapersonal communication. It increases your confidence. Self management. So our daily routine also, we talk about it in our minds. Okay, at 6 o'clock I have to do this, I have to wake up at 6, then you have to do this at 7, then I have to go to the gym at 9. So all these are self management, which comes from interpersonal communication, because we keep talking to ourselves. Self motivation. Sometimes we motivate ourselves. For instance, you have an examination and you are very, you have very low confidence. You think, okay, I am just not going to succeed in this examination, I will fail. But when you say these things to yourself, no, I can do it, I will work hard, I will clear this examination, UGC net is my dream, if I work hard I can clear it. So this is self motivation that comes from intrapersonal communication. Next is independence. Self awareness allow person to be independent. Adaptability. The person is highly adaptable to his surrounding, as the knowledge of his qualities allows him to confidently and calmly take decisions. So we take decisions when when we think about it in our mind, we analyze things. So all those come from intrapersonal. Few demerits are introverted, because like interpersonal communication, when two people communicate, so you become socially active, you talk to each other. But intrapersonal, if you keep on doing intrapersonal communication only, you will not get mixed up with other people. Second is the wrong assumptions. Sometimes when we think only from our point of view, we might take wrong decisions. So when we talk to others, we get feedback also from intrapersonal communication. Incorrect decisions, it is same like wrong assumptions. So if you take someone else's advice, if you talk to a elder person or an experienced person, you get to know more while taking decisions. So you can also take incorrect decision when you think of deciding everything on your own. For instance, you have decided to take up some job in Himalayas. So you did not ask anyone. You say, okay, I am just going to, I want to become a mountain climber. I want to climb Mount Everest. But you haven't spoken to anyone. A person who has been a climber, you can ask them what are the various challenges, how to survive over there. So without interpersonal communication, if you rely only on intrapersonal communication, you can take incorrect or wrong decisions as well. Overthinking. When you keep talking to yourself, you think about some things a lot and it can disturb you tremendously. Interpersonal communication can also lead to arrogance, because interpersonal helps you to decrease this arrogance. Because if you think, okay, I can do everything on my own, I don't need anyone, I am my only boss, so that gets you into arrogance. Now let's talk about interpersonal communication, which is also known as dyadic communication. This term is very important. Dyadic. Dyadic means two. Interpersonal communication means when two people are communicating with each other. For instance, interview, So when you are going to give an interview, there is a interviewer who is taking the interview and the person who is giving the interview. He is called interviewee. So that is an example of interpersonal communication. It is simply a method of communication that only involves two people, such as telephone conversation or even set of letters. So one person is sending a letter to the other, two people exchanging, talking or communicating through a letter, that is interpersonal communication. So it allows for more specific tailoring of message and more personal communication than do many of the other media. So interpersonal communication is a very good form of communication which helps to build relationship. The first merit says establishing relationship. If you spend lot of time communicating with some person, you are prone to bring to make a strong bond with the other person. If you have two friends, one is lives very close to your house, okay, and one friend you have very far away in some other city, okay, so his house is very far, right? So the person who lives nearby, you are definitely going to have interpersonal communication with that person more because you are living close by. Interpersonal communication helps you make a strong bond with the other person, while the person who is far away, when you do not speak to that person, the bond or the friendship decreases. So for establishing relationship, interpersonal skills, for that interpersonal communication is very important. In the workplace, so in a workplace you should have interpersonal skills, because how you have to deal with customers or your boss, these in this situation you should have that particular skills to convince the other person or put your thoughts in front of the other person. Having detailed information, so when we are dealing with a complex issue, then emails don't come through, there is lot of back and forth which can make misunderstanding. So for instance, you are working in an organization and you are talking over the emails. So at that particular moment, you cannot rely only on emails, because emails comprise only of words. While when you talk, when two people communicate, there are so many misunderstanding that goes away, because in written words, sometimes it lacks the tone or the emotion that the other person is having. Next is working on major projects. If you are working on a very critical project, at that point when you talk to the other person, interpersonal communication is done, unnecessary problems goes away. So just instead, when you tell the information directly to the person, instead of, like, you there is a boss, one person is the boss, this is the subordinate, and then this is the junior. If you want to say something to the junior, for instance, this is the hierarchy, the boss says something to the manager and the manager says to the team member. So if you want to say something to the team member, the boss directly goes to the team member and informs about the task that has to be done. So unnecessary, this middle person, this manager who was coming into between, if this person goes away, the boss speaks directly to the team member, unnecessary problems goes away and that job is done very peacefully. Some demerits of this is misinterpretation of body languages or gestures can influence receivers' interpretation of message. So sometimes the sender does have a different thought in mind, but because of some body language or gestures, non-verbal communication, this could be a demerit. Interpersonal communication can be time consuming. It is also sometimes expensive. There can be sender bias or receiver prejudice. Sender bias means you are talking to some junior and in a company, and you do not have very good relationship with that person. So at that time there can be a bias. Bias means that you are not, you don't do justice, you are favoring one person to, to the other. The third is group communication. So group communication is when more than two people are communicating in groups. So it is a kind of communication where few people are communicating with each other. It could be over the call or on WhatsApp video call, or so simply some people are sitting in a room. So that is group communication. So there are activities. For instance, you might have seen Rodi's program on television. There is a, in the selection process there is a GD round. So in GD round what happens, 4 5 people are given a topic and then they have to talk upon it, and the judges, they look at the conversation and decide whom they should pick for the next round. So group communication is a communication which helps to see what, where you stand in a whole group. It helps to bring confidence, lot of confidence you get from group communication. So the merits of group communication is that there occur some ideas because of different viewpoints. So you are deciding on something. For instance, you are planning a trip with your friends. So you say that, okay, we should go to Goa. Some say, okay, we should go to Jaipur. Some people are talking about Kerala. So what happens is, when you talk to 3 4 people, you're talking in a group. So the best ideas, some say, okay, when people say, okay, let's go to Goa, some people might think, okay, I think in India Goa is one of the most famous trip destinations. But when, when one friend says, okay, this is not the right season because it might be very hot at that time. So you see how group communication is helpful. Not just one person is right. When you talk, the best decision is taken. With the assistance of group communication, organizations come up with more comprehensive solution. Okay, they come with better solutions to a problem. It helps in decision making. When a group interacts with superior authorities about some issues like pay, they will get more favorable outcomes. So instead, one person is approaching the senior and saying about the salary issue or the raise that they want. If people go in a group, it tends to have more impact on the senior. Leadership qualities can be developed through group communication. So this is very important. Any leader you see, maybe the chief minister of some state. So that doesn't happen that leader one fine day he becomes a very great leader. No, that is not true, because it happens through group communication. Group communications help you to slowly build that confidence that you can lead a group or a group of people. Everything has a merit, demerit. So few demerits of group communication is, sometimes because of dominance of some superiors or dominant members, other participants do not share their actual or accurate viewpoints. So sometimes what happens is, if some person is a very bully or very dominant and doesn't listen to anyone, at that time there are some few participants who are shy when they actually hesitate to speak up. Group communication can also create productivity issues for the company when group members involved in some other sort of personal discussions. So sometimes happens is when there is you're working in a company, instead of focusing on what you are being appointed for, what your work is, there is a group which starts to talk about sports. So instead of working, they spend like 30 minutes talking about sports only. So what this leads, this is a waste of time for an organization. So instead of productive issues, instead of doing some productive work, this group communication can also lead to time waste. Next important type of communication is mass communication. So it is defined the process of creating, sending, receiving, and analyzing messages to large audiences via verbal or written media. Remember, one is for intrapersonal communication, two is for interpersonal communication, more than two is group communication, and when you are talking about thousands or lakhs of people, then mass communication comes into play. Mass communication can involve your print media. Print media is your newspapers, your magazines, your journals, and the latest technologies like the internet, smartphones. These are also a kind of mass communication media. The merits of mass communication, it educates people. Very true. There is news, there is Discovery Channel, National Geographic. All these channels, they help to educate people to learn about health matters, environmental conversation, and much more. Health matters, for example, the current COVID situation. So what has happened through television, we have come to know there are various ads or programs which tells you how to follow the COVID-19 guidelines. These are some of the merits of mass communication. Second is people get latest news in very short time. For example, something is going on in USA. So if there was no mass communication, we might not know what is happening on the other side of the world. But because of the current latest mass communication technology, in very short time you can get to know what is happening on the other end of the world. People get to bring out hidden talents. There are so many shows on television or on radio where people can tell the world what they have through acting, singing, dancing. These are so many. This mass communication has given such a great platform to people, for people to show their talents to people all over the world. Children's knowledge increases. Children can learn from quiz programs, animal programs, and so on. Radio is convenient as people to get short news with mobile phone. With mobile phone also one can access. Great in promoting mass consumer products. There are so many products for companies, for big companies. Mass communication is very helpful. Why? Because they can target a large number of audience, like a brand like Amul or something like Tata. These, with a single ad, can reach so many people and help them sell their product more. Some demerits are too much information everywhere. We are overloaded. I agree to this a lot. For instance, you talk about YouTube. Everybody says YouTube is awesome, it's very nice. But you see, there is so much distraction over there. If you want something, if you're watching something very serious or very important news, also, then also there is a ad, then there are comments to distract you, there are other suggested videos which distracts you so much. There is a lot of information like lies. Mass media does lie. We know that there, like you have heard about tabloid journalism. So what it is, when news like sensational news like related to celebrities, sports, all these, what they put so much of mircha masala in the news so that your news sells more. I would like to give you an example. Sometimes what they do is, I have seen this on YouTube. They will give a title like "People Died in 2020." So they will put a picture of Sushant Singh Rajput, and Rishi Kapoor also died. Okay, and then what they will do? They'll put a third picture, any actor like Hrithik Roshan. Okay, so what happens is, we will be very curious to know, oh, Ritik died, I did not know only. So what we will do, we'll directly press on that video and we will watch it. You watch the whole video, know where Ritik Roshan comes. Why? Because mass media lies. You will be waiting, you will be thinking, okay, Ritik Roshan might have died, and you don't know, but that was nothing. That was just a stunt for them to, for you to click on that video. So there is such of negative stuff from media. There is so much of violence that is being showed on the media. Some small thing also happens, they exaggerated so much on the mass media. So this is a demerit, and world is not only white, there is lot of black out there. So the best thing you can do is to check out news in several resources. Now let's talk about communication on the basis of communication channels. First is verbal communication. Very simple. Verbal communication is communication where words come into play. It involves use of words, mostly face to face, or written communication face to face. When you are talking to your teacher or your friend or your mother, that is verbal communication. So phone and internet has allowed oral communication to spread a lot. Then written and oral communication can be classified. Verbal communication can be classified into two types. First, written. Second, oral. Written means you are writing words. Oral means you are speaking words. In both these communication, words are being used whether spoken or written. Written involves any type of interaction that makes use of written words. Communication is a key to an endeavor involving more than one person. For example, when you are writing a letter or a message on WhatsApp, this is example of written communication. Merits of written communication is record and preservation. So you can use it as a proof. For instance, there is a you are working in a company, your junior says or your senior says, I will do this work, and he or she doesn't do it. Then you can show it as a proof on the email. If there is something on the email, they said, I will do, but they don't do. So what you can do it, this can act as a record, and you can show them when it is needed. No need of personal meetings. So, written communication, every time you do not want to speak to the person and talk about, when you do want to avoid personal meeting, you can write on the channels. For example, you can write it on email or on WhatsApp message or normal messages. Authoritative in nature. So, written communication is definitely authoritative, which results in subordinates taking instructions seriously. Obviously, when you see something written, for instance, your senior is saying this has to be done by tomorrow, so you take it more seriously than when the other person is speaking it, because if they have written it, it becomes as a proof, and if you don't do it, the seniors can take action towards you. Some demerits are time consuming and expensive. The biggest problem with it is expensive as compared to oral. You need pen, paper, or you need a computer, internet, digital forms you need. While oral is what? You just go to the other person and you can say. No scope of flexibility. So if you have said something in written form, For instance, there is a will. Your grandfather has a will. So there is no scope of flexibility if he is no more. Your grandfather is no more and he has written a will. No one can change this because there is no scope of flexibility in written communication. Delayed response. This is also very true. If you are writing email is a type of written communication, right? In email, what happens is one person sends the email in US. So here it is morning, there it is night. Then this person, after 12 hours, he is going to get up. So then it will be morning in US and then it will be night. You see, for email conversation also there is such a lot of time lag, hence delayed response come into play. This happens in written communication. Next you have oral communication. So oral communication is delivery of words of mouth of one person to another person. Receiver uses ears to listen. Oral communication is faster way to spread out information or any kind of message. So some merits are quick and fast. Obviously, there is no delay. Directly you are saying to the other person in front of the face or over the phone, which makes it very quick. Flexible as in you can change things as you want. So that is very flexible because superior can alter the oral order easily according to feedback of their subordinates. For instance, the senior has given some task. You have to do this task A, B, C. But the junior says, okay, sir, if we change the following things, I think the product will become better. So, at that particular moment only, they will change, and hence there is a lot of flexibility in oral communication. No chance of misunderstanding. So if there is, you are talking to the other person and if you have there is any doubt, you can then and there ask the other person. Hence misunderstanding goes away in oral communication. Ideal for groups. So when groups they are talking, we have already talked about group communication. So there are large number of people. At this point, oral communication is way better than written communication. Next, you have demerits of oral communication. No legal validity. Yes, this is true. We cannot use it as a proof. There is no legal proof of oral communication. No way and accountability. Yes, there is. This is an important disadvantage. No, usually people do not take it as seriously as they take written communication. Not suitable for lengthy messages. So if there is something short that has to be told, then oral communication is good. But if something like policies of a company is to be told, a person joins a company and you want to tell them the policies that are present in the organization. At that time, the HR is not going to tell these policies to each and every member. So, written communication is more beneficial than oral communication. Oral communication is less organized, unlike written communication, which is organized and contains information point to point. Oral communication is less organized, which results in confusion. So, when things are written, the information is firm, strong, but in oral communication, it becomes confusing, and the recipient or the receiver can fail to understand what the sender is saying. The other type of communication is non-verbal communication. So non-verbal communication is communication of feelings, emotion, attitudes, thoughts. How are they being transmitted? Through body language, for like mo- movements, gestures, eye contacts, etc. For instance, the teacher is teaching in the classroom and the way she is standing, or the way, if the teacher is teaching while making eye contact with the student, it means that she knows the subject well, or she knows what she is teaching. Here I would like to talk about the various components of non-verbal communication, which are kinesics, proxemics, paralinguistic, chronomix, or haptics. Kinesics is body movements which we use while communicating. For example, pressing your index fingers onto your lips signals other to be quiet. So when you are using your body language, that means it comes into the category of kinesics. It could be facial expressions through face when you are trying to tell the others something. Smile means you are happy, frown means you are sad, narrowed eyes means you are thinking something. Gestures, pointing fingers, shake, handshaking. And if you are waving someone is going and you are waving your hand, that is also kinesics. Wherever body movements come, movements like pace up and down, finger jumping, leisure strolls. So if you are pacing up and down, this means that you are in tension, you are tense. So this is also a type of communication. What you are telling the other person, that you are in tension or you are worried about something. Next type of non-verbal communication is proxemics. So proxemics means space and distance. It means when you are talking to your friend, you are talking to your best buddy, childhood buddy. So it is likely that the distance between when you two sit next to each other and you are watching a movie, what you do, you will sit close to each other. But if you are sitting on a public bench, you are sitting at that moment, you, the stranger, and you are going to sit far away. You are not going to be very close. So this is also a type of communication which tells how familiar you are with the other person. That is proxemics, use of space and distance. So if you are talking to a teacher, you will maintain a particular distance between your teacher while communicating. Making physical contacts, posture, positioning, all these can come in under proxemics. This is also very important type of non-verbal communication, paralinguistic. I am going to highlight it as much as I can because this has been asked so many times in NET examination. So paralinguistics is vocal sounds other than words. When a person is speaking, only the words don't matter, students. The tone also matters, the pace also matters, the pitch also matters, whether it is high pitch, low pitch, how is the tone, what is the rate with which the speaker is saying. All these things matter, which come in under paralinguistics. Vocal sounds we make other than words. It is the way we say something, not using words. When we interact with others by vocal pitch, high or low, speed, loudness, and rhythm, these are different types of paralinguistic. If you are giving speech in a class using vocal sounds, like you're saying, like, as you know, oh, so all these different terms, if you go on repeating again and again, this tells, what does it tell? These are not words. These are something that you are trying to convey, that you are not very confident in that particular topic. Next is Chronomix. So Chronomix, one question was asked in 2020 on Chronomix. It is the study of the way people use and understand time. So time also helps us to communicate. For instance, you are going in an interview. The interview was scheduled at 10 a.m. and you reach that particular office at 10:15. So you are 15 minutes late. So you might think, okay, just 15 minutes is like nothing. But chronomics means to understand and use time, because in some cultures time is very precious. It is, we usually say time is money. At that time 15 minutes late is also very big thing. So chronomics is the study of the use of time and understanding and using time. Finally, you have haptics. Haptics is the study of people when they touch each other. By touching, you can convey a variety of messages. So here one example is, you are walking on a road and you hit some other person or you bump into the other person. You just say sorry, because that is also a way of communication. So if you touch inappropriately to the other person, that is also very bad. It also communicates that the other person is trying to flirt with you. So haptics is also a type of non-verbal communication. Next, we have communication on the basis of formality. Formal communication is when you use communication for official purposes. For instance, you are working in an organization or for your workplace or business settings. So, formal communication mostly written but can be oral as well. So, here no personal communication is made in formal communication. The other type based on formality is informal, the kind of communication which we have with our friends, with family, and with our near and dear ones, you can say. So, among an organizations, not on the basis of formal relationship in the organization, but on the basis of informal relationship and understanding. Okay, very normal, very simple kind of communication, informal. Next, you have classification on the basis of direction. So, this is very important. On the basis of direction, you can also call this as organizational communication. So it could be upward. Upward means simply when the junior, or you can say subordinate, is talking to a superior. It is upwards. Originate from subordinates and continues up to the organization's hierarchy to superior. From junior to superior is upward. The inverse of it, the reverse of it is downwards communication. For instance, the boss is giving instructions to the members of a particular team. So, from your head of the team to team member. Okay. So, the head is talking to the junior. Okay. Downward is when the senior is talking to the junior, it is downwards. Reverse is upwards when junior is talking to the senior. So this is usually used when they want to send something, some information or some directions that the senior wants to tell their junior, or if they want to command something, then downward communication is used. This is also a type of communication, a different one, which is called when they want to send something, some information or some directions that the senior wants to tell their junior, or if they want to command something, then downward communication is used. Crosswise communication consists of two type of information flows. It is horizontal and diagonal. Horizontal means when people of same status, people of same position or status are speaking to each other, that time horizontal communication is used. Allows people with similar or same rank in an organization to cooperate or collaborate. For instance, there is a sales team and a production team. Okay, like manufacturing manager is there, some, okay, a product is there, there is a manager for manufacturing that project, and there is a manager for selling that project product. So here these people are of same status. Why? Because this is also a kind of manager, manufacturing manager, and this is a same sales manager. If people of similar status are communicating, this is horizontal communication. So it helps in problem solving, accomplishing tasks, improving teamwork, goodwill, boosting efficiency. Some of the benefits of horizontal communication. Next is diagonal communication. It is the communication held between different structure of a business firm. It is the communication between the higher and lower sector of a business firm, also known as cross-functional communication. So, what happens when a person of, let's take this example only, a manufacturing manager is talking to the team member of sales team. So this is diagonal. Okay, if the manufacturer is talking to the person in the same team, it will be downwards. But they are talking to the team member of sales team. So this is diagonal communication, right? This communication is very helpful because what happens, it breaks the barrier of superiority and being superior or junior. Both can interact, and this helps to build or end the communication barrier between higher and lower sectors of business, improves efficiency, and helps in team building. One important type is grapevine communication. Recently, questions have been asked in this, very fewer questions, but still you should know because few years ago, grapevine was one of the important topics. They asked a lot of questions. So, grapevine is a kind of communication which usually involves rumors and gossips. It is a kind of informal communication. So, there is nothing true about it. It could be rumor, it could be a gossip. The kind of communication that happens in organizations, those who might have worked in some organizations, they know that this is really very common. People talk about each other, they complain, they tell all sorts of information about other person. So it travels through informal network, often quite faster than other formal messages. Sometimes it gets more powerful and becomes receptive. Okay. Next is communication barriers. So, what is the meaning of barrier? The word barrier means obstacle. Obstacle means something that is coming in between the communication process. Anything that is hampering your communication is called a communication barrier. Okay, now let's talk about the various kinds of communication barriers. Here, some people might be thinking, what are barriers? Barriers are nothing, just the obstacles that come while people are communicating. So these are obstacles, or we can call them hindrance as well. Whenever two or more people they are trying to communicate, you all know that it is not possible that everything is going at ease. There could be some noise, some problem that could cause failure in communication. So here we are going to talk about the various kinds of barriers that are present in a communication process. The first and foremost, we are going to talk about language barriers. The name only suggests the kind of barrier it is, which is related to language. So it is one of the main barriers to communication. When people who are trying to talk to each other or communicate, if they do not understand the language, the both who are talking, then this could be a major communication obstacle. For instance, like a person who is from India, he has gone to Japan for a meeting, but he doesn't know how to communicate in Japanese, and neither does the person who is from Japan. He doesn't know English. So how are they going to communicate? So this will be a very major barrier, and they will have to make a call a translator who can translate Japanese to English and English to Japanese for them. So this would be for so time consuming and so uh, sometimes irritating and frustrating. So language barrier is a very crucial barrier in communication. So next is semantic barriers. So semantic means, student over here, semantic is, whenever this word comes, you should know that this is related to language. So it is language that this kind of barrier comes when there is different meaning to words. For instance, like people, you say the word buy. So buy has got so many meanings. One buy is purchasing something, buy. The other is buy, like I will come by 7 o'clock, and the other is buy, when somebody goes we say bye. So these are so many words who are pronounced in a similar way, but they have different meaning. So these are semantic barriers. And also semantic barriers could arise when a single word can have different meaning in different languages. So that is also semantic barriers. Now let's talk about psychological barriers. So these are barriers that have emotional factors of the person involved. For instance, you are talking to a stranger, or a new person has come to your class, and this is you and this is the new person. So you are trying to be friends with him. Teacher has asked you people to sit in the same bench. You remember when a new person or a new student used to come in the class, a teacher used to try to make the student feel comfortable. So she used to make sit it to sit him next to some person and ask him to be friends with him. So what teacher says, you have to be friends with the new person, and if the new person is shy, he is or she is shy by nature, so this will also be a barrier. This will be a psychological barriers. Okay, all here some examples are given, like speech disorders, depression, phobia. Phobia means fear. And emotional IQ of a person. So all these come into the category of psychological barrier. Next is physical barriers. So physical barriers, as the name suggests, something that is related to the noise. For instance, loudspeaker, if they are being played, then you will not be able to communicate. Or faulty equipment, that means if you are trying to talk to someone over the phone, and the equipment is not working, so that is also a physical barrier. Also geographical distance. If you are working in a company in India, and the other person, your boss, is in Australia, so this is also a barrier. This could be, since there is so much distance between the two, geographical distance is there between the sender and receiver, so this is also a physical barrier. Okay, also here they are talking about closed doors. If you are in a suffocated room, closed room, so that will also be a physical barrier because people will not be able to freely communicate, right? Next is cultural barriers. So cultural barriers occur when people of two different cultures, they try to communicate with another. So it could be related to dressing, religion, food, or general behavior. This barrier can also be like someone who is from a rural place and someone is from a metro. Also, this kind of barriers, for instance, like in India, people we eat with hand, right? But there are places in other countries people eat only with spoon or fork. So that is also a cultural barrier. Maybe if these two people, if they sit together, they might not be comfortable because there is cultural barrier between them, and this could be also a obstacle in communication. Okay. Next is environmental barrier. So it is something related to your physical barriers. It includes environmental factors that affect communication. Like if the environment is very cold, so that will also be a kind of environmental barrier. People will not be able to communicate, or the physical setting. So this environmental barrier is something related to physical barriers only. Okay. It should ensure that environment where communication takes place should be comfortable and secure. Okay. This is very important for communication. It should not distract the communicator. Now let's talk about technological barrier. Technological barrier means something that is related to technology. For instance, if you're talking to someone and the internet is not working, so that is a technological barrier. Or your device gets hanged. So if the device you are trying to speak with, that is not working, that is also a technological barrier. Or if there is some technical issues. Okay, sometimes you see that the network goes off. At some places, you do not find proper network. So that is also technical barrier in communication. Okay, now let's move on to the other important topic of communication, that is models of communication. Some students feel this part of UGC NET Communication Unit as bit difficult, but there is nothing to be afraid of. This is very simple topic. Let's try to understand it and you'll be very comfortable with this. So what are models? Models are just systematic presentation of the process which helps in understanding how communication is done. Okay, what it is like you are telling how the communication process is done in a diagrammatical form. Okay. Communication model shows the process metaphorically and in symbols. How they are trying to show in symbols, general representative on communication by breaking communication from complex to simple. Okay. Methods and channels of communication to be used, and the purpose of communication must be considered before choosing specific communication model. Okay. We'll talk about that. So what is models of communication? A systematic presentation of or diagram of how the communication process will go. Okay. So we have different models of communication. The first and foremost is the linear model of communication. It is the simplest model where communication flows in one way. Okay. One way communication. So communication messages flows in a straight line from directly from sender to receiver. So there is no feedback. This is a major drawback of linear model of communication, which is there is no proper feedback. The only task that receiver does is to receive the message. Receiver does not give any feedback. Sender sends the message and the receiver has to interpret it. The sender will not come to know whether he or she has, the receiver or the audience has understood the message or not. There is no feedback in this model. Now, some people might be thinking where this is being used. So this is usually used in mass communication like radio or television, where the communication is one way. In television, what happens? You sit in front of the television, the channels show the movie or different shows or news. You do not have any say on what will be displayed on on the television, or what will be said on the radio. So you do not have any uh, your opinion or feedback. So this is linear model of communication. Some of the various types are Laswell model, Aristotle model, Shannon Weaver, Berlow's SMCR model. So Laswell model of communication describes who is saying something, which channel is being used. Okay, so this makes the model sender receiver. It is also called the sender receiver model. Aristotle model. So what Aristotle model of communication says that the basic elements are speaker, speech, occasion, audience, and the effect. Okay, so these are five basic components of this model. Speaker plays an important role in public communication. Yes, that, like we said, it is a kind of model which is applied in mass communication. One more model is Shannon Weaver model. It is linear model of communication that provides framework for analyzing how messages are sent. So it is best known for its ability to explain how messages can be mixed up and interpreted in the process between sending and receiving. Berlow's SMCR model. So here this SMCR stands for source, message, channel, receiver. So source is the first person, the first element of this model, from where the communication starts. Next is the message, which is actually the information which has to be sent. Channel is the method through which the message is being sent, and receiver is the person who takes the message. Now, second is the transactional model. First one was linear, second is transactional. So, what is transactional? This is a model of communication where people try to communicate with feedback. So, what happened in linear communication? There was no feedback, but in transactional model, feedback is present with social reality, cultural upbringing, and relational context. Non-verbal feedback like gestures, body language is also considered as feedback in this model. Okay. So here this is the diagram of transactional model. What is going on here is sender is sending the message through the channel to the receiver, and the receiver is providing feedback to the sender. When they are providing feedback, the receiver becomes the sender and the sender becomes the receiver. You see here noise is also present. So they all know that, we all know, in this type of communication, feedback is there, also there will be noise. There is one more factor in this type of communication, which is it usually happens in face to face communication. Like your classroom communication, it is a very good example of transactional model of communication. Then the example or the type of transactional model is helical model, where communication is both linear and circular. Okay, it is something like this. So an example of transactional model. Now the third and final model of communication is interactive model. Interactive model of communication is also called convergence model of communication. So this is very important. You should also know the other name for interactive model. It is similar to transactional model, as they are both two-way communication. So linear was one way, interactive is transactional was two-way model of communication. Interactive is also two-way model of communication. But the only difference, what is the only difference and between transactional and interactive is both are two-way, but the difference is interactive is communication with the use of internet or web, like the kind of communication that we do in the present world using new media. What is the new media? Like internet. So people can respond to any mass communication like videos, news, etc. People can exchange their views and ideas. So what is the only difference between transactional and interactive? That in interactive, it is also this type of communication uses internet for communication. Like what we do, the live classes that happens on YouTube. What you do, you interact also. When the tutor is teaching, you write in the comment section. So feedback is also there. It is also two-way communication, and you are also using the new media. What it is, the new media is the internet. You are using internet for communication. So this is the third and final model of communication. So here it is the same way. Sender is there, receiver is there. The receiver becomes the sender and sends the message. The only difference here is that the response is delayed response. Okay. Feedback is there, but feedback is a little late. The communication takes place between humans and machines in both verbal and non-verbal ways. This new model of communication is for new technologies like web. Okay, so this is Scrum's interactive model is a process that takes place between sender and receiver. There will also be a message or medium through which message can be transmitted. Now, here is the difference between transactional model and linear and interactive model of communication. In linear, there is no feedback. In interactive, there is delayed feedback. How delayed feedback? Because sometimes what happens when if I post a video on YouTube, you might drop a comment after 12 hours of posting the video. I look at the comment after 3 hours and then I reply. So what happens here is the response is delayed. There is a difference of, it could be hours also, minutes also, days also. But in transactional model, there is spontaneous feedback. Like the example is face-to-face communication or any classroom communication. Okay. Let's do some questions on models of communication so that this topic becomes by heart for you. Which of the following is associated interpersonal communication and is also called circular model of communication? So, we are talking about interpersonal. What did I tell you? I told you that transactional model uses face to face. Okay? So, face to face communication, then this question will, the right answer to this is option A. Okay? Option A is your right answer because interpersonal communication is followed in transactional model. It is also called circular model of communication because the sender sends the message, the receiver gives response. Since there is instant response, it becomes a circular model of communication. Also, B and C will not be the right answer because these convergence, what is convergence? Convergence is nothing but interactive model of communication. It is another name for interactive model of communication. And linear will not be the right answer because they are talking about circular model. Hence, D will not be the right answer. Let's look at another question. Which of these models also has a concept of noise and barriers of communication like language, network problem, etc., which affects the communication process? So here, this two words will give you the answer directly. Network problem. What did I tell you? I told you that interactive model of communication uses internet as means of communication or new media. What was so interactive model of communication can have the problem of network, right? But C is not the right answer. The right answer is E. Why? Because convergence model and interactive model, these both are same. Convergence model is just another name for interactive model. So B and C both are right answer. Hence, answer is E. Which model gives the opportunity for a lot of noise simul because the communication is simultaneous? Okay. Which model gives the opportunity for lot of noise? Noise is present in transactional model of communication because communication is simultaneous. When the communication is simultaneous, instant, okay, instant feedback is there, simultaneous response is there in transactional model of communication. So A is the right answer. The 7 C's of communication. So in communication we have 7 C's. What are those? Clear. One should be clear in what they want to say. Yes, we should be clear. It should not be, communication should not be vague. So vague means unclear. It should be clear what we want to tell the other person. It should be concise. Concise means short, brief. We shouldn't use lengthy sentences while communicating. For instance, you might have seen, if we write the essay and the teacher has given us 200 words for writing an essay, you write 350 words, so that will not fetch you good marks. If you write only 110 words essay, you can get more marks because you should communicate in a short way and in a way that you are being able to present the concept or the idea very well. So more words doesn't matter. Speak, if we speak less and if we speak sensibly, that will be more helpful than using extra words. Third is concrete. Make your information, make sure your information is correct. So concrete means we should not tell something which we are not aware of. Okay, this will be a very bad impression of ourselves in front of others. We tell about something. For instance, if you are telling in front of a class, if the teacher asks a question, make sure that it should be right. Unnecessary just to show the class, okay, you know the answer. You shouldn't just say anything. When you know the answer, then only we should say. So your communication or the information should be concrete, it should be correct. Fourth is it should be correct, which means message should be error free. Coherent means it should logically flow. There should be a flow of information. Okay, there should be connectivity to what you are saying. Here, if you're for instance talking about our country India, so you should just talk about India, because if you just talk about India, then you are talking about computer, or then you start speaking about politics. So this is not right. Why? Because there is no flow in what you are saying. If you are doing, or if you are presenting a speech on India, just talk about India. Do not go here and there. there should be proper flow in what you are saying. Sixth is communication should be complete. It means that message should contain all necessary information. Okay, if you're trying to give an information, it should be complete and not just bits of information. Next is courteous. So it is a key to success. It involves not only thinking about receiver but also giving value to his feeling. So we should speak in a way that it doesn't hurt the feeling of others. Now let's talk about classroom communication. So classroom communication is that type of communication which takes place between a teacher and her students. This type of communication could be verbal, using words, non-verbal, sign language, and words written also. Verbal could be oral as well as written. So in verbal communication refers to sending, receiving message through sounds and language. Can address one student or whole class through verbal communication. So if the teacher can is asking question, she can ask a particular student or she can ask a open question to all the students in the class. Non-verbal communication in a classroom refers to body language, how the teacher is standing, her gesture, her posture. So if the teacher is nodding her head while a student is speaking, this means that the student is saying correctly. What the student is saying is um, correct, and she's encouraging the student to speak further. Written communication is sending or receiving message in writing, a assignment or a project or a slide or presentation. That is a kind of written communication. So, Cole and Chan is a typical model of communication which has stages: formulation of a message, message encoding. Okay, what is message encoding? Transferring ideas into words. Then, message transmission, how you are transferring the message, whether it is oral or written or body language. Message decoding or interpretation, this is done at the receiver end. And finally, feedback and evaluation. So the student gives the feedback and the teacher does accordingly. Now let's talk about classroom discourse. What is this? So this term, classroom discourse, refers to language that teacher and student use. So language or the medium, it could be words, it could be written. Okay, talking or conversation is medium through which most teaching takes place. So the study of classroom discourse is the study of process of face-to-face classroom teaching. Significance of classroom discourse. How this helps. It brings clarity and distinctiveness in the speech. Okay. During interaction, teachers have scope to identify talent, intelligence, and excellence of the learners. Learners can be prompted to think and do something new in subject area. So discourse, when teacher tells, this helps students encourage learners can do things promptly. It also provides learners scope of speaking and probing into his or her subjects. Learners can acquaint themselves with new topics of interaction. So this is the significance of classroom discourse. Mode of interaction in classroom, it could be a teacher student. Okay, so teacher student is like, if the teacher wants to speak to the student privately, maybe she wants to tell her that there is some problem with the behavior of the student. So it could be before the class or after the class. Teacher to students. So teacher to students means a teacher is trying to communicate with all the students. Students, this is a peer communication when two students interact with each other. Small peer group means more than two students communicating in a communication process. Teacher to all classroom students and all students of the classroom. So these are different types of classroom interaction. So it could be collaborative learning, discussions, interactive sessions like debate or discussions, conversation with learners, teacher asking students or talking about a particular topic, loud reading, storytelling, role play. Role play means you can act, and soliloquies, interaction. So these are different types of classroom interaction. Different. Let's talk about the previous year's question that has been asked from this topic is differentiation between acceptance and non-acceptance of certain stimuli in classroom communication is the basis of the right answer is selective attention. So what is stimuli? Stimuli is the response to a particular thing. For example, if you are talking about visual stimuli, so visual stimuli is nothing, it is the plural of stimulus. So sometimes what happens when a student he looks at a film, he might understand something more. So that is visual stimuli. So acceptance and non-acceptance of certain stimuli is selective attention. Right answer is C over here. Classroom communication is a transactional process. So the assertion is this. The reason says a teacher does not operate under the assumption that student responses are purposive. So what is the meaning of purposive? Purposive means that there is a particular purpose in your in the response. So they are saying teacher does not operate under the assumption that students response are having a particular purpose. So here this is the wrong answer because the opposite is true. Teacher operates under the assumption that students response are purposive. Like if the student is nodding, it means that they are understanding. If they are scribbling on the book, this means that there is some problem. Students are not interested in the class. So classroom communication is a transactional process. Why? Because there is face to face communication, there is feedback in this type of communication, and there is simultaneous response. So this is transactional model we talked about recently few minutes ago. So in this question, C is the right answer because A is true. Classroom communication is transactional process is true, but this statement is wrong. The reason is wrong. So C is the right answer. Classroom communication should essentially be, so it should be empathetic. Empathetic means whenever you are communicating, you should always consider the feeling of others, because there could be people of different social background or religious backgrounds or cultural background in a class. So it should be empathetic. Empathy is the higher form of sympathy, that we should care for the feeling of others. The last and final topic is mass media and society. What is mass media? So mass media refers to institutions that provide such messages. Which messages? Like institutions such as which provide newspapers, magazine, television, radio, film and multimedia websites. So first is, previously we had traditional mass media or traditional media, which was like puppet shows, and there were like street shows, Nautanki, it is also called. So those were different type of media. But in the new era, magazines and newspapers, these are old. But the new ones are like web, internet, social media. So when we want to communicate with large audience, you use mass media. And the important factor is that the people are heterogeneous. What is the meaning of heterogeneous? It means that same type of people are not there. For instance, the content that is being produced by mass media, for instance a film, there is a film that is being broadcasted on television. So a old person, a senior citizen is also watching the movie, a child is also watching, a adult person is also watching. It could be male, it could be female. So there are the audience is heterogeneous in nature. They are not of same type. Mass media communication is characterized by the transmission of complex messages to large and diverse audience. That is what I was talking about. Heterogeneous audience is present using sophisticated technology of communication. So we have four basic functions of mass media. The first is surveillance. So surveillance means news and information role of mass media. It could be like if there is for instance, this COVID situation which is going on, this pandemic. So what happened? Through mass media we came to know about COVID because it started from Wuhan city of China. So we came to know about this virus through mass media. So surveillance is the role, is the function of mass media where it keeps an eye on the world and brings information to the citizens. So it could be information about floods or military attacks or economic conditions, or it could be like normal information of products, entertainment guides, stock market prices. So this is the surveillance function. Second is interpretation. This provides a context of new information. Third is socialization. So socialization means transmission of values within a society, because whenever you watch a movie or a show, what happens, there is some values or some change that happens when you look at it. When you watch a movie, you know that some there is a message in that movie. So this mass media, it brings us transmission of values. For instance, the youth or people, it could be anyone, they look at these TV shows or videos on the internet, and they learn so many things. So there is a change of behavior. We tend to learn so many things. Also, when we look at celebrities, we look at their fashion. So we also get to know so much about the current fashion that is going on. Entertainment, so this is very simple. Mass media has got so much entertainment. You have drama, there is news, there are movies, there are these online platform. Now people are so much into Netflix, Prime videos. All this is mass media. What is social media? So social media is nothing, web based communication tools that enable people to interact or communicate with each other, like Facebook or Twitter. These are different type of social media. Next is marketing communication campaign. For instance, like Pulse Polio, we have seen the ad. So what it is, whenever you see some ads on YouTube, you might have seen, right? When you open YouTube, you see some banners or there are certain ads on whenever you play a video. So what is that? Marketing campaign. So it could be a product, it could be like of LIC insurance or HDFC Bank, or this could be Pulse Polio, where Amitabh Bachchan is talking about taking 2 drops for kids so that they don't get the polio disease. So these are different campaigns that are being conducted by mass media. Now, what is selective exposure? So selective exposure is refers to individual tendency to favor information which reinforces their pre-existing views. Okay, so if you search something about cooking, so you might search for different products or different items to buy, then you are watching videos of how to make recipes. Then what will happen? Only those kind of information will come on your computer. So this is selective exposure. Now, what is gatekeeping in mass media? Gatekeeping is the process of selecting and then filtering items of media that can be consumed within the time or space that an individual happens to have. So it means, what is mass media? It is like a gate. It is a kind of barriers. If you are the citizen of at one side and this is news on one side, it plays the role of gatekeeping. For instance, I'll give you an example. During COVID, uh, just imagine if a lot of cases have come. Just imagine every person is having coronavirus. God forbid, I hope it doesn't happen to anyone, but by chance, if it happens to everyone, if the news it starts saying all these things that every person in the country is having corona, so what will happen? There will be mess in the country, people will be running here, then they will be frightened. So mass media also does the role of gatekeeping, where it shows selected information. If some news can hamper the citizen, or they can create a situation of panic, that type of news they will not show. So that they also do the role of a gatekeeper. Here also I'll tell you some more important terms in communication. First is cue. What is a cue? So, cue is an action or event that is a signal for somebody to do something. Okay? Any action or signal that tells someone to do something. It could be verbal cue. For instance, you are asking, sometimes we get inside in our house, we are not able to find our mobile phone or our keys to our car. We will shout and say, has anyone seen my car keys? So some people might be saying yes. So that is verbal cue when you are asking somebody. Non-verbal cues are communication signal without the use of vocabulary. So that is non-verbal without words. Okay, non-verbal. A facial expression of sadness would be an example of non-verbal cue that someone is unhappy. Okay. Also, if the teacher says, do you know how many states are there in India? So, if the students put their hand up, if some student knows the answer, then they'll put their hands up. So, what is this? Non-verbal cue. What is enculturation? Enculturation is the transmission of culture from one generation to the other. So, in India, we eat with our hands. So, this why we eat with our hands? Because we have seen our parents eating with their hands, and they have seen it from their parents. So, enculturation is the process by which people learn dynamics of their surrounding and acquire values and norms appropriate or necessary to their culture and its worldview. In India, in Hindu culture, people touch their feet of their elders. So this is culture. This has been taught to them by their elders. Okay. So this is enculturation. These are some important terms you should know that might be helpful for your exam. One more term is immediacy. So in communication, it is the way we signal closeness, willingness to communicate, and positive feeling to another person. So what is immediacy? It is the way we talk to, way we signal closeness, how close we are to the other person, like by giving a compliment to the other person. So these are nothing but verbal immediacy. Okay, so this is it. Thank you for watching this video. I hope this video helps you. In this video we have covered each and every topic of communication unit, and this is a very important and scoring unit. You can score marks easily. I hope you like this video. If you have any doubts and queries, do write it down in the comment section and we will be happy to help you. So we will meet in our next video on another unit. Till then, study hard. Bye.